During the Middle Ages, we had the most known of all the knighthoods called the Knights-Templar, which translated as Knights of the Temple. Most of us that's familiar do not know that the original Knights-Templars were actually brothers and sisters from Ethiopia. You know, if you look into Ethiopia today, the oldest castles on the planet is in Gundar, which is in Ethiopia. You know, then you also have some castles that's in southern Egypt in the Aswan area. You know, so the first science of iron making really started with us. Because of course, if we built pyramids over 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, we already were dealing with the sciences of stone masonry, carpentry, astronomy, so on and so forth. So the Middle Ages really sparked off with a crusade. And crusade, if you take the word crusade, it actually means cross, which had a lot to do with Christianity. But really, you're really talking about the teachings of Jesus or Yahshua, you know, who really goes back to Ethiopia as well. Even in the book of, in what we call the New Testament or the Gospels or the Injil in Aramaic, you find that the first people to be taught from Yahshua of his 12 disciples was Philip. And Philip actually met with a brother that was actually on a chariot. You know, Philip itself, the word means horse lover. So I guess you could say that they both stopped at the stoplight, to put it in modern day terms, and they began to discuss the whole science of the Torah, so on and so forth. And he explained to him that Yahshua had came, and he was basically the new Messiah, and Messiah just really meant ordained king, to build a new kingdom that Solomon had not finished. Because really, that's the real teachings of Jesus, was to build a kingdom on earth. You know, as it is in heaven, so it is on earth. So that's basically what the knighthood was about. And as we had discussed earlier about the 12, he had 12 disciples, as Yaqub received a teaching down from Abraham about the 12, which really is an economic program, because the Bible itself really is about 12 tribes, or the chosen people looking for a promised land. And the 12 families, basically 12 aspects. As mentioned, you had security, you had investment, you had Department of Housing, you had Department of State, you know, Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice, Commerce, Transportation, Labor, Energy, and of course the clinic. And this is the same thing what Jesus did with the 12. So when you look at the Crusades, most of the time it has something to do with the science of Yahshua, Jesus, who said he came for the house of Israel, or known as Beta Isra-El, which what the philosophers or Ethiopians call themselves. So what we would say the oldest Christianity, even though that's what they call it, is actually still the teachings is Ethiopia, which is really an ancient teaching, which is not nothing new. So we deal with Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, all those are the same teachings, which is basically about 12 families with 12 sets of skills to basically create an economy. You know, so with the knighthood order of the Knights of the Templars, they were basically taught, you know, by our ancestors or our brothers called the Knights Templar. Now the symbol itself, the cross, really represents equilateral 0 for longitude and latitude. That's what the cross really originally represented. You know, so that became a symbol for him at that time, because they were at a crossroads as far as trying to extend the teachings of the heavens being on earth. You know, so the Knights Templars, according to where we're taught, started with a man named Hughes Payen. But if you take the word Payen, it's really Bayen. Bayen is also an Ethiopian name, which goes back to ancient Morocco, which is called Bey, or Rebbi. All these really mean teaching. So Hughes Bayen was the first founder, or the first one that we taught, you know, into what they call today masonry, to teach them our sciences. Because at that time, we had began to fall. You know, we were basically became arrogant and ignorant, just like anybody that becomes a boss at your job or anywhere else. You know, you begin to maybe get pumped up that you're the leader, so on and so forth. So we began to see that we began to fall. You know, so we took a group of Europeans, also known as Caucasians, and began to teach them. You know, back then it took them 35 to 50 years in trying to be like us. You know, so we began to teach them through the whole Knights Order. You know, in Europe, which we were ruling, the Moors basically ruled Spain, France, Germany. Even the word Spain comes from the word Sabanian, which goes back into the word Shabazz or the word Sheba. You know, so when we say Spanish and French and all these different languages, these are our languages. We taught them. We taught the whole planet their languages, which is all good, and I think we do need to know those languages again.
What manner of name is Hazim? Irish? Cornish?
Moorish.
So the Knights Templar was brothers in armor, like, you know, King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table, so on and so forth. All these comes from us. The original order goes back to, well, as I mentioned, Moorish, which is Maurice, or even Mary. So you have an order in Germany called the Order of St. Maurice. It wasn't a person per se as a name, but it was an actual order. You know, as you can see, we have various pictures showing these knighthood orders of brothers in various positions. You see some brothers in a b-boy stance. You see some brothers with dreads. You see some brothers with the boar head, full beards, so on and so forth. You know, all these different teachings and knights. There's over 200 pictures in a book written in German that I have found in Brooklyn showing these knighthoods. So we're the originators of all knighthoods and castles. As a matter of fact, castles was our military outpost. They said king has his castle, but we really lived in palaces. You know, so what happened was the kings eventually moved into our military outposts after we fell, and then they began to live in our castles and so on and so forth.
You would do well to mind your tongue, Moor. Dance well, Moor.
Starting to like this word more.
So that was called the Age of Chivalry. Now, we began to teach the Europeans when they began to come in the Holy Land. And in Masonry, that is called Shriners, ancient Arabic order, nobles of the mystic shrine. You know, in a movie called, I think it's called Heaven on Earth, or it's Kingdom's Heaven, you see in that movie that you basically see that we began to teach them our ancient sciences. In a book called Stolen Legacy, on around about page 3940, it talks about how the Moors basically rose up, you know, from an ancient teaching, going back to ancient Sumeria, ancient Ethiopia, ancient Egypt. You know, all these of our teaching, the old ancient Orient, which a lot of us originally came from over here, you know, ancient, you know, the Native America, or the Olmecs, or Lamech, and that teaching was passed on from ancient Atlantis, because the Olmecs, America is the part of Atlantis that did not sing. You know, so when we brought the teaching over here, and then we went into seclusion, and then those teachings became hidden, and then Muhammad, 1400 years ago, in ancient Arabia, you know, went back to Ethiopia, was taught the sciences of Israel, science, law, arts, mathematics, so on and so forth, and that became known as the Shriners. That's why the Shriners are red, gold, and green, because they were in Ethiopia. And then in moorish-spain, when the Knights-Templars fell, then we went onto our ships. You know, some of us went to Ireland, some of us went to Scotland. That's why you have a Scottish Rite, a York Rite, so on and so forth. It depended on where we went into hiding at. You know, then we became known as the pirates. And in the movie called National Treasury, you see that the Knights Templar looking for our ancient ark, because it had been moved around. You see, in the movie, we get on our ships again, because you notice the ships flew a black flag with a skull and a crossbones, which is just basically symbolic of one of our ancient teachings. You know, it has nothing to do with no scary horror, so on and so forth. But basically, the pirates, the buccaneers, which I'll go into the word buccaneer, which comes from the word bacon or boucan, as Sir Francis Bacon, you know, so on and so forth. It's actually a process. But the pirates basically was an extension of our teaching. And so that is the origins of Freemasonry, you know, regarding the Knights Templars, the Shriners, and the pirates. And that was the teaching that was passed on to what we call Freemasonry.